ad tech systems have a lot more scale. Even smaller companies get billions of impressions every day. That means we have to have this massive infrastructure to cope up with that much scale, design fancy databases so that we can answer those queries in like millisecond.
This year, CTV ad spend is expected to grow to 37 billion almost. And there are still a lot of fragmentation constraints around CTV, right? That being more premium inventory still.
At GumGum, we got really heavily invested into that for a while. We developed best-in-class technologies to use AI and contextual analysis technology to look at pages and eventually images and video.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Metrics. We are joined today by Ken, the CTO of GumGum, and Vaibhav, he's a EVP of Software Engineering. So digital advertising right now is going through an interesting reset. Like there's a lot of buzz around digital video kind of growing 2x faster than the total media. And AI is moving from the automation or optimization to decisioning. And in all these, GumGum has been at the forefront of contextual advertising for years. And today, what we are going to discuss is what is broken, what is changing, and what will win in future of contextual advertising, AI, CTV, and in general in AdTech. So I'll start with Ken. In your views, right, how has contextual evolved over the years, right? What is exactly broken fundamentally when it comes to digital advertising? What do you feel contextual advertising is evolving, and where are you in this journey right now?
Yeah, good question. Well, contextual advertising has been around quite a long time, even before digital, right? Contextual is all about just trying to understand what is the environment like where an ad is going to be placed and how can you leverage that to maximize some type of benefit for the advertiser. So, I would say it started back when people were putting ads in magazines, right? You might not know who's reading the magazine, but you knew something about what is the page in the magazine about that somebody's reading, right? And that's valuable information that you could use to target an ad to somebody without knowing anything about them. But when things became more digital, I think things started to swing the other direction where now there was some ability to kind of like try to figure out who was watching something or who was reading. And, that became something known as audience targeting. But yet contextual was still a powerful signal that could be used in digital as well. But it's evolved over time, as you mentioned. Like earlier on, there were very sort of simplistic, rudimentary ways to do contextual. For example, just understanding kind of like a magazine, what was the vertical of the website somebody was viewing, right? If you were looking at a sports website, just knowing that it was sports and labeling it as sports was kind of an early form of contextual advertising. But then, the next step was to take it a step further and like higher granularity for what people are viewing. So it became desirable to know like not only what website are you on, but what page are you looking at on a website and what is that page about? And then from a technology point of view, that was still, the early days of doing that was still kind of labeling things. Like it was like labeling each page. Instead of labeling the whole website as sports, maybe that individual page could be labeled as sports. So that was done for a while. And then it got a little bit more sophisticated where it's like, well, maybe we could build technology to understand what the page is about through keywords and looking at what keywords might show up in the URL of the page or the page title or something. So for a number of years, that was kind of the way that a lot of companies did contextual advertising, was just reading those keywords off the page. And then as things got more sophisticated and machine learning and all these natural language processing came into existence, there was a desire to extract the content from these web pages and use technology to understand what that page was about beyond just what keywords might have been shown in the page title or the URL. So then there was a whole era of more sophisticated contextual targeting around that. And then it got just more and more sophisticated with computer vision, looking at the images on a page and more sophisticated natural language processing. And I think, at GumGum, we got really heavily invested into that for a while. We developed best-in-class technologies to use AI and contextual analysis technology to look at pages and eventually images and video. But now, I think if you say, where is it going? There's an opportunity just to go even further. And maybe I'll leave some of that for some of your remaining questions as you ask about what's changing.
So Vaibhav, next question to you. When it comes to AdTech platforms and tools, What are some of the hardest problems that are still unsolved today, in your views?
One of the biggest problem that we all face in AdTech is AdTech systems have a lot more scale. Even a smaller companies get billions of impressions every day. And that means we have to have this massive infrastructure to cope up with that much scale, design fancy databases or employ fancy databases so that we can answer those queries in like millisecond. So scale is, in my opinion, still evolving, still unsolved, because there is just a lot of effort required to even maintain an ad tech system. For example, like if you want to query within the request timeline, then you need a different kind of database. For warehousing, you're going to need a different kind of database. For configuration, you're going to need different kind of databases. So you keep needing all different kinds of things. And then there is, of course, AI, right? Even in traditional AI, forget about generative AI, right? How do you serve a model for like 30 billion impressions per day? And 30 billion is considered a smaller scale, by the way. There are other companies, I mean, the scale for Google, Amazon, even Amazon DSP will be way, way more than that. And imagine using AI models at that scale, like what kind of infrastructure is required? Can these models deliver like a millisecond response times, right? Those are scaling problems that are unsolved. And generative is even bigger because generative models are much bigger and they take more time to respond. How do you make sure that these models can be used in real-time contextual discovery or real-time decision making within a request cycle? And it's a cost problem as well, because every request to these models takes significant amount of resources. And the newer frontier that we are facing is, can we implement these models in the request timeline or not? And if yes, what would be the cost for that? Can we use micro models to reduce that cost, right? So all of that stuff is changing, evolving, and we're trying to tackle that right now.
Let's focus on the CTV part, right? Like CTV, we were discussing earlier that this year CTV ad spend is expected to grow to 37 billion almost. And there are still a lot of fragmentation constraints around CTV, right? That being more premium inventory still. So when it comes to CTV, how do you look at overall where it is failing short today and what are the opportunities there?
One of the things I've noticed about CTV is it's kind of hard to measure the outcomes that advertisers want in CTV. And as a result, with a lack of those tools to measure the outcomes, they kind of measure the success of a campaign by where the CTV campaign runs. And because of that, the very premium CTV content and channels, I'm talking about the household names that everybody's heard of when they think about CTV, that tends to be where advertisers want to spend their money. But that creates sort of a scarcity of inventory because the world of CTV is actually much bigger than just those household names. But yet those household names are the ones getting all the demand, right? So one of the big problems I see is, how do you change people's willingness to take advantage of all the diverse amounts of inventory out there and kind of dip into the mid and long tail of CTV, if you will, to look for value beyond just the household names? Because think about it, like we all watch Netflix or Amazon and stuff like that, but some of us might watch some apps that not many people have heard of because we have niche interests or niche content, right? Well, if you're an advertiser, you could reach me on Netflix and pay a $60 CPM, but you might be able to reach me on, if let's say one of my hobbies is fishing or something, and I'm watching the fishing channel on the LG TV. You can still reach me, but the CPM is going to be much lower because there's that opportunity and not as much demand there. So I think what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see more advertisers open up their minds to what's out there and realize they can reach people in a lot of diverse situations. And I think that will also help innovation and it'll help the diversity of content, because smaller CTV publishers, I've noticed, are having a hard time establishing themselves in the ecosystem because they're not getting the ad money when they have a small niche following. And that's kind of killing innovation and making all the content so mainstream. So personally, I would like to see a lot more diversification in CTV.
Sure. Thanks. And would you like to add something more to it around monetization and scale perspective when it comes to CTV? Are there any constraints? Because what I have seen and observed is a lot of advertisers who are traditionally good at linear advertising. They're always looking at ways more on the converged TV where they extend their linear spend to the CTV as well. They don't still not look at CTV as a different channel or different spend. So what are your views around that?
No, I mean, if you could know from platform perspective, right? I think I agree with Ken that even our biggest problem is really measurements. There is no good way to measure people, right? If you try to do some innovation in CTV, then maybe there are different kinds of challenges. For example, we have a format called in video. So even though it's a CTV format or a video format, that we use SSAI or server-side ad integration to stitch the ad, its overlay ad onto the content. So that's an interesting way, but then that means we are in the middle of live streaming, right? And we become critical. So that is an interesting problem as well, which is different from display, right? That problem does not exist in display. But display ad kind of loads independently, separately. Whereas if you're doing something innovative, then you can be in the middle of live streaming. So those are some of the interesting differences between CTV and display, I would say, from engineering and platform perspective.
As part of what's changing, because I'm not sure you're going to kind of get more into CTV, I want to make sure we cover this. As part of what's changing, people are used to a certain type of ads from broadcast TV, which are kind of like your standard TV commercials. But bringing things into CTV, which means bringing it into digital environment, there's just more opportunity for ad innovation in general. And I'm very fond of looking for those opportunities to create a better user experience in CTV, because today's generation of people, and I get this firsthand from my kids, they don't really tolerate TV commercials the way that older generations did. It comes off as being very sort of interruptive to somebody's time, because if you're watching a program and you all of a sudden have to stop and wait 5 minutes for your ads to play. I know I watched a movie with my kids, and it was a free movie supported by ads. And when it got to the ad break, they looked at me like I was insane. I would actually want to sit there and wait for this thing to finish before they could start watching again. And that's, Vaibhav mentioned our product called In Video, which is kind of like integrated advertising, right? Where you don't have to interrupt the user's timeline with ads. You can find a way for ads and content to kind of coexist at the same time. It kind of requires your brain to do a little bit of multitasking, right? You're watching the content, but you're also observing the message from the advertiser at the same time. People today, like especially my kids, they are multitasking all the time. My kids watch YouTube videos on 2x the speed while they're on an iPad, while they're doing something else, right? And so that's not a problem. Like people can take a little bit of content coexisting with ads at the same time. So I think finding ways to do that on CTV is a huge opportunity. And that's one of the things that we're invested in. But there's other ad formats in addition to that too. Like for example, GumGum, we just launched an ad format called pause ads, right? And in this case, the ad is interrupting the content, but it's not really interrupting because the user themselves decided to pause. The user took control of the moment, paused the show. And it's actually a good time because you have their attention at that moment, right? To show them something that they'll see, that they'll definitely see. So I'm really excited about finding these new ways of doing alternative ad formats, let's call them, in CTV. And to that end, I'm on the board of directors for the IAB Tech Lab.
Okay.
And we've been working together with this committee on standardizing CTV ad formats.
Okay.
And so I think in a couple months, hopefully maybe even sooner, a set of standards is going to come out for these like in-content overlay type ads, these pause ads, ads in the CTV menus. And I think that's going to open up the world of scale for doing more interesting things in CTV than you see now.
Focusing more on what is changing today, specifically with AI around, right? So Vaibhav, from you, want to understand more around, do you believe that the predictive advertising is the stage we are reaching at? Again, more around like IAB Tech Lab's recent initiative around the Agentic Advertising Framework Management Protocol. They recently launched a registry as well. There are other initiatives around AdCP. So where do you see this entire AdTech ecosystem evolving with respect to AI?
No, that is definitely happening. I mean, agentic buying is something, I don't think it's a matter of when it'll happen. It's definitely going to happen. A lot of companies are working towards it, including GumGum. We have our own agent, right? And buyer's agent can talk to the seller's agent and then issue an agentic RFP. And we can create a proposal within minutes or even seconds. And this proposal can then go back to the buyer's agent. Buyer's side can then decide, even agentically, who to actually award this campaign to. And then maybe there's a human in the loop there. They decide, and then agentically an IO can be issued on the seller side. And then seller's agent will simply accept that IO and activate that campaign completely automatically. So all of these systems are ready. There are not many dollars flowing right now in this through, but I think it's just a matter of time. People are starting to test with each other, and within few months, you'll see dollars flowing through the system. So, and of course, there'll be some kinks that will have to be removed, right? Because it's a new technology. Things will evolve. We don't know which one will win, right? AdCP or the IAB's version of it. So those things need to be seen. But agentic buying is definitely going to happen. And it's not just agentic buying, but it's agentic activation as well. It's all agentic planning, agentic activation, everything. And then eventually, I'm pretty sure a performance reporting will be agentic as well. And then performance reporting will be reported back to the agent, buyer's agent. And then buyer's agent will start developing history of some sort. Again, I'm dreaming, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of like next couple of years.
There's a lot of people that are speculating on whether these new ways of doing agentic buying and selling is going to like displace real-time bidding, RTB, right?
Oh, yeah.
I personally don't think it necessarily will. What I see is that, RTB has its place where buyers at scale can just access inventory and apply rules in near real time, right? But what I think these agentic systems that Vaibhav was just talking about is getting rid of half of the advertising budget that still goes to companies dealing with each other manually, right? So I guess you could call it like the direct selling, right? That's still a big thing. Like everyone thought that all money would go programmatic, but even in our business, we see some upwards of 50% of clients that still want a managed service. And in a managed service, they want to hand over their objectives to somebody and have that company manage their campaign. But the managed service has inefficiencies.
Yeah.
When Vaibhav talked about RFP, a request for a proposal or making a proposal, these are all activities that occur in a managed service transaction that can be automated. And I think the agentic way of doing things is that opportunity to automate those things and basically remove the friction between buyers and sellers when it comes to doing managed service or guaranteed buys.
So on the same topic, right? Like with all of this AdTech ecosystem evolving more with agentic interfaces, AI chatbots, also agent-to-agent communication and protocols, do you believe, Vaibhav, that this has created newer challenge around the governance of those multiple agents or the orchestration of multiple agents talking to each other?
It definitely is a new space and it's still evolving. But what we are seeing is that the earlier agentic talk was people used to call agent to anything that's even a script, probably. But now I think the definition is solidifying. And now people understand that agent is something that activates, that actually takes an action. But not just that, it also is something that requires decision making and is capable of decision making. And the decision is not just simple if, then this, that decision, but it's more intelligent decision, more fuzzy decision, where the LLMs actually can play active role. So an agent is something that can take that kind of decision. And so with the definition of agent also formalizing, people have also now formalized how do you build an agent. So there are a lot of frameworks that are coming in. There are a lot of components that have been defined for an agent. The next couple of years are going to be very interesting. And our job is really cut out for engineers, essentially, to use all these tools and build as many agents as we can.
Sure. And when talking about using AI assisted engineering in your software engineering processes, product engineering processes, where have you seen more efficiency gains? Is it more around automation, like test automation, actual coding, the entire software development life cycle? If you could share some insight.
It has drastically improved. And where we see the most gains is coding. It's very easy now to use one of these tools like Codex or Google has Jules, and of course, Claude. Using all of these tools, it's very easy to produce code now. And then engineers' focus has shifted to what really needs to be done and just really prompting that properly to the software. And then software just codes that feature. I mean, we have even seen success in the sense that you don't need to even do that if there's enough context in your Jira ticket. Then you can even build simpler software simply from that ticket directly. You feed that Jira ticket into AI systems like Codex and something, and Codex will completely build that feature or fix that bug, even submit the pull request. There's some of the bottlenecks still exist. For example, reviewing code. Engineers are producing code at a much faster rate than they used to. But we need to carefully review this code because we can't just push that to production. There's a system which is doing hundreds of millions of dollars. If you mistakenly put in some sort of code there and it breaks the system, you could lose a lot of money. So the bottleneck is reviewing, and there's a lot of interesting things going on right now to see Can you actually have one model review other models' code? Can Codex's code be reviewed by Claude and Google and all that stuff? So those are interesting experiments that are going on. Deployment is still a little bit manual. People are careful. Security is a big challenge right now because attacking these systems have become easier.
Cool. So now moving to our last segment on who wins today and what the future of contextual looks like in the industry, right? So this shift from who the user is to what that user is thinking, right? So the contextual is evolving from earlier more like brand safety to brand suitability to now brand intelligence and intent or mindset based targeting. So what are your views, Ken, around that next phase or future of contextual?
Yeah, I mean, you said a key word, which was mindset, which is a word that our company GumGum is really excited about and focused on, because we believe it's kind of like the key ingredient to really putting the right ad in front of the right person at the right time. And we say that because people have traditionally been left with two options. Like, you can either target audiences and try to understand what people are about and how to target them, or you can target contextually, which has just been like in the moment. But there's some, like, a middle ground where some magic can happen, right? When you think about mindset, you need to think like, what do I know about that person? What are they doing right now? And what have they done very recently? And how can I put all those signals together to have the best, fullest understanding of the capability or the potential for receptivity of that person at that moment to the ad that's going to be shown to them? So that's what we're focused on right now. And it involves a lot of finding the right, let's call them features or signals in the advertising bid stream that contribute to what your mindset is, whether it's the time of day, the day of week, the device that you're using, the words on the page that you're reading, the things that are appearing on the images that you're watching, what's in the ad creative, and I can go on, right? We're kind of like pulling all that together and using kind of more sophisticated, if you get technical, like vector embedding representations of data to not only find what matches the advertiser's objectives and intent, but also what maximizes their KPIs through optimization algorithms. So I think the next, short way of answering your question of like, where are things going? I think contextual is just going beyond just the instant moment and more to a slightly fuller understanding of your mindset.
Sure. Whatever we are doing today in terms of AI or this evolution, every 3 months there's a new thing and it is constantly evolving, right? So who will be the winners if we take a little longer outlook from 2 to 3 years? Is it going to be data, product, AI, or all of them converging together to a best of use and then kind of putting to practice?
I don't think I would answer that question as whether it's product, data, or something like that. I think the answer is whatever you can do that's going to drive an outcome for an advertiser, whoever can do that the best, whether they use data, whether they use different types of ad products or formats, those are the winners. And I think it's going to be a combination of all of those things. It's not going to...
Yeah, to support him, right? AI may do how, but ultimately if that AI does not drive an outcome, then it doesn't matter to the advertiser. Like, they don't care whether you use AI or not, as long as you meet their objectives. So meeting their objectives is supreme.
This is it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been a very insightful conversation. Thanks, Ken, Vaibhav, for sharing your perspectives, your views with us. And we'll meet again in the next episode of Beyond the Metrics. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.